Welcome to the third season of the Stronger Than Autoimmune podcast. As an autoimmune warrior myself, I understand living with chronic illness isn't easy. You're not alone. This podcast is made to give hope. I will interview individuals living with autoimmunity along with experts and businesses to help provide knowledge and support. As a health coach, I understand there is no cure for autoimmune disease, but creating small changes to lifestyle can influence how we feel. And shout out to all my listeners out there because this podcast is made possible by you. And how can you support? Glad you asked. There are 3 ways to show your support. 1, rate the show on Spotify. 2, leave a review through Apple. And 3, share the episode with a warrior so they too can have hope and be stronger than autoimmune. And enough of this intro, let's get started. Hello, autoimmune warriors. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Brian Bentow, a tech entrepreneur, software architect, and author who has an incredible story of resilience, innovation, with a career spanning leadership roles in tech giants like Microsoft and other startups. Brian has made a name for himself in the world of healthcare IT and software development. But after being diagnosed with Crohn's disease at 35, Brian shifted his focus to healing himself through the Autoimmune Protocol, or AIP diet. Now, as the founder of Get Saucy, he's on a mission to bring delicious, diet-friendly sauces and seasonings to the world, helping others on their own health journey. So we're excited to dive into Brian's inspiring transition from tech to wellness and learn how he's using food to make an impact on the autoimmune community. Welcome, Brian.
Thanks.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, I would love to begin at your health journey and what the initial turning point in your health journey when you were diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and how did that moment shift your approach to your personal and professional life?
Yeah, so for me, there were about 6 months between the time I started having, constipation and oscillating between that and diarrhea. And I tried changing my diet. I wasn't excited about getting a colonoscopy, so I kept putting it off. But then it just progressively got worse as I tried keeping a food journal, tried eliminating things. It was really hit or miss. And one day I saw blood and in my stool, and I said, okay, this is serious. I was afraid that, perhaps I had colon cancer. So I decided I'm going to get a colonoscopy. So I got the colonoscopy. When I came back, my doctor gave me a printout of all of of what my colon looked like, and in vivid detail, I could see, these ulcers, and I just started to weep. I mean, my wife was with me, and she's like, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I just couldn't believe that, I was responsible for this. Even though, looking back on it, it's not 100% my fault, but at that moment, my inner critic was, had a very, very brutal take, which was, this is, you have one body, God gave you this body, and this is how you took care of it, and you have nobody to blame but yourself." And so I just felt so much shame and guilt and disappointment in myself. The most disappointment I've ever felt in my entire life. And at that moment, I committed to figuring out how to repair my gut, um, and do all the research and be as resourceful as I possibly could be to get healthy again.
Wow, that's intense. I mean, to really acknowledge that you were weeping and that you realize that everybody has just one body, And yeah, you could get different parts replaced, but what a shocking moment for you. And thank you for sharing such an intimate
Yeah,
moment.
yeah. I mean, as I, whenever I think about it, um, it brings up a well of emotion for me. Um, it's something that I sometimes I try to think back, could I have done things differently? Why didn't I change earlier? Why did I wait so long? Um, you know, but it also allows me to empathize with other people because I realize that people are afraid to get a colonoscopy. It's not fun to do. Changing your diet and lifestyle is really hard. You hope that it'll just go away magically. Um, but yeah, that's sometimes it's not going to go away, and you just have to deal with it.
So, would you mind answering this question as far as how was colonoscopy after all? I mean, for people that are afraid.
Yeah, it's not as bad as you think, but the prep is the worst part. You drink all these uh like Miralax, and you're in the bathroom. You completely flesh out your entire system. Um, and then when you go, you're only awake for a brief moment. They put you under, and then you wake up a couple hours later, and it's over. It's really not that bad. Um, but it's more about almost the stigmatization of we're not used to things. Americans don't like to use suppositories. We're not used to thing. It's kind of a exit only. Um, you know, it's so
Yeah.
there's just but yeah. In hindsight, it wasn't a big deal. Um, but it's just one of those things. Once you get a clear picture of where your health is at, um, and this is true if you're just like getting a blood test, or if if you happen to find out that your blood sugar's too high or something like that. And it's different once you actually have the data and you're looking at it. It's so much more powerful. Before that, you're not 100% sure what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for sharing. Like I said, I mean, that's a very intimate story. And so once you decided to treat your Crohn's disease with the AIP diet instead of traditional medication, what were the biggest challenges that you faced and how did it impact your daily routine?
Yeah, so for me it was very difficult. So my wife and I have traditional gender roles, and she took care of the kids, did all the cooking and cleaning, and I worked. I had a full-time job, and I had two startups on the side, and we had two kids, and it was just difficult. Life was just difficult just to kind of get through our normal routine. And now I had to go from, her taking care of all the food preparation or eating out, whatever, and I had to get involved in cooking. Um,
Mm.
and I didn't enjoy cooking. My wife doesn't really enjoy cooking, especially from scratch. And but I had made this commitment to myself. So I'm like, okay, let me do some research. Let me learn how to cook. I haven't cooked in since before, my wife and I got married, and you know, I didn't even know where everything was in the kitchen. I was definitely that type of husband. I'm like, hey, where's the grater? You know, and I didn't know where anything was. So I had to reacquaint myself with all the cooking appliances, look for recipes, read books, and then when I found recipes, even after I tried following them, the food didn't taste like the way it should. So I'd make marinara sauce, and it sort of looked like marinara sauce, but it didn't taste like marinara sauce. And I could force myself to eat it, but I didn't eat a lot of it because it didn't taste good, so I would be underweight. my wife and kids wouldn't eat it because they said it tasted horrible. Um, and so it was definitely rough. I'd spend my Saturdays and Sundays doing batch cooking for the week, eating canned sardines, canned fish, uh, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Wow. So you really had to do, yeah, it was a 180 for you.
oh yeah, completely. We went from being able to have fun on Saturdays and go to farmers markets, go to the beach, uh, to me just spending all my day cooking and cleaning. I also should say that the first couple weeks when you transition into it and you cut out grains, a lot of people go through the keto flu, um, where you start getting you have a lot less carbs, um, so your muscles start to ache because it's like the glucose is being pulled out of your muscles, until your body readjusts to burning ketones, because you're increasing your fat consumption. But yeah, it was a pretty dramatic change. There were days I felt dizzy. I would learn to drink like salt water and eat bananas. But once you make it past those first 2 weeks, it got a lot easier.
Yeah. 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 It's definitely not easy. And would you mind sharing how your diet was before?
Um, yeah, I mean, I pretty much I ate mostly the same things for breakfast and lunch. Like breakfast would be eggs and toast, like sourdough bread that I got at the grocery store. Um, maybe some cereal. I'd get these little packs of hummus and pita chips. My wife would make me a fruit salad and a sandwich. Um, and that was pretty much breakfast and lunch every day. And then dinner, we'd have tacos, just kind of like regular food we'd eat out at like Wahoo's or Chipotle or, um, just local restaurants.
And now what's your go-to breakfast?
Pretty much I drink a smoothie every day. I put um, kale, spinach, beets, half an avocado, a banana, half a kiwi, 3 scoops of Vital Proteins protein powder, some avocado oil, and that's pretty much it. And then I'll have um, some chicken sausage from Applegate, or I'll have like a beef stick from Chomp.
Okay. I
But
haven't heard
yeah,
of chops. I've heard of Paleo Valley.
oh, Chomps. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a beef stick. They have a sea salt beef stick that has very, very few ingredients.
Okay. Yeah, I have to check that out. Thank you. So many people struggle with the mental toll of doing what you did, the 180. How did your mindset, since you've come from such a strong background of being able to do so much with your career, how did that affect managing your autoimmune condition?
Um, so for me, I I'm fortunate in the sense that I have a lot of discipline. Um, I started to do fasting when I was 9 years old, where um, for Yom Kippur, I wouldn't eat or drink anything for 25 hours. So I, at a very young age, I had a lot of discipline. So for me, it wasn't too difficult to kind of to commit and to maintain that discipline. Um, but the biggest thing that I learned was when I first started, I would do the AIP diet 6 days a week, and then I'd have a cheat day on Saturday, and we'd go out to like one of our favorite restaurants. But every time I did that, I would have like a week or two setback, and it would take me a while to get back to homeostasis. So I kept reading blogs, and I just randomly came across a comment on a social media post, and it said that with this diet, in order for it to really work out, you have to be 100% compliant, and you can't have a cheat day. And so once I read that, and I was like, okay, I thought I was committed before, but this is another level of commitment, and I was just like, let's go for it. And for the next 2 months, I'm like, I'm going to try being 100% committed and we'll see what happens. And that's when all my symptoms resolved and my biomarkers for inflammation went down by 90%.
Wow. Yeah. So the power really is in the food.
Yes. It's also, the mindset. Like, um, there's this great book by Michael Singer, The Untethered Soul, where he talks about your inner voice and also about what it means to make a commitment. And when you truly make that commitment, um, it's not a matter of willpower anymore. It's just, you just go because you're actually fully committed. When you're tapping into willpower, it means that you're not truly committed. You're more like, I'm gonna, I'm gonna be compliant when I'm home, or I'm gonna be compliant when it's easy, and you're not fully committed. But when you're fully committed and saying, I'm not gonna put any food in my mouth unless it's compliant, I know how it was produced and I know what ingredients, and those ingredients are compliant. It's not a matter of willpower anymore. It's just a matter of action. It's for me at this point, it's like automatic.
Yeah. Making that commitment made things easier to just go with. I mean, it's a habit now. It's not a thought in your mind. Like before, it seemed like with willpower, you push yourself. So when you feel, okay, well, I'm at a party, I feel okay. So you're constantly up and down. But once you really commit, you're not in the up and down. It's just habit, sounds
Yeah,
like.
exactly. Like, so my family, we live right next to In-N-Out, and I don't know if you know In-N-Out, but it's really popular in California, and I love In-N-Out. And initially I would sit and watch my family eat In-N-Out in front of me, and I would feel, a little envious, or bad about it. But when I fully committed, um, my mind almost stopped thinking of it as food anymore. Like when I go to the grocery store and I look at like the candy aisle, things that are wrapped in those packages, like stop being food for me.
Yeah, that's hardcore commitment for real. And if we switch to your professional background with your extensive experience in tea and healthcare IT, how do you think technology can further improve the management of chronic conditions like what you're going through and other autoimmune diseases?
Yeah, so for me, my approach to startups in general is I try to find the lowest tech approach to solving a problem. Um, and in the food industry, we are already using, machines to mass produce food. Um, we're actually kind of going the opposite route of trying to avoid, food science. Um, Interestingly, a lot of companies they wanted to make products, less expensive, have longer shelf life, and have a consistent taste, which are all great things. But when you're trying to optimize for health, and you realize that when you pick a vegetable, you know, sometimes the vegetable will have more or less sweetness depending on what time of year it was harvested. Um, there's going to be some inconsistencies, just like wine. When certain years of wine taste different and they're more vintage years, there's just more variability. So it's about having a different objective, but we're trying to use technology in a way that doesn't change the food significantly because our bodies are not used to these industrialized food products. And that's the thing that I really learned from this is that autoimmune disease it's sort of this weird thing where yes, I have Crohn's disease, but it only flares up in the presence of certain nutrients. And so it's it's sort of like, is that really a disease or is it just a food allergy or food sensitivity? I don't really know, but that's how it's changed my mindset. It's almost as if my DNA is not, well equipped, or it's antagonistic to certain nutrients.
Yeah. Yeah. You're really listening to what your body needs. I mean, if we all kind of did that, I mean, there would be less illness.
Yeah, it's sort of like a more extreme version of precision nutrition. So in the future, I believe that we'll have monitoring, either through little patches that you wear that monitor your inflammation. Um, I know a company that's creating a device that integrates with your toilet, and it'll be able to monitor every time you go to the bathroom. And
Oh, wow.
so, having this level of passive monitoring, and keeping track of what you're eating, that type of, and then eating foods that maximize your energy levels, your hormones, that would be precision nutrition. And I think that autoimmune disease is the complete opposite of that spectrum of precision nutrition, where it's like you're eating the absolute worst things for your body. Um, and I want to take people from that very, very negative extreme to how can we be eating the absolute best things for our bodies so we can all live in greatness and be as productive and happy and as healthy as we can be.
Yeah. And that makes me think of almost like a biome. Have you ever taken that?
I've done biome.
Okay.
Yes. I have sort of mixed feelings about those different types of tests. Just because in my experience, when I first was diagnosed with Crohn's, I did a test and my microbiome was something. And then after I changed my diet drastically and did another test, um, my microbiome changed dramatically again, and it was like, which is the dog and which is the tail?
Mhm.
Is the microbiome what's driving, what's good for your diet, or is your diet driving the microbiome? It's not quite clear to me yet. And it's much more cost effective to change your diet and see what results you can get from that, instead of spending a lot of money on supplements, doing all these tests. I've done the hair test. I've done the biome test. I've tried a lot of different things. I've bought expensive probiotics. Um, and now I don't spend money on those things. I just eat well, and I'm having great results.
Yeah. And the part of eating well or how you found out is really by the process of elimination, the AIP diet.
Yes, I started doing the AIP diet, and it worked out. And then I started adding a few things back, um, and I figured out what I could add back.
Yeah.
Um, but even the AIP diet for me, there's still certain things that I can't eat that bother me, like
Mhm.
strawberries. For some reason, they're allowed on AIP, but for me, I still don't do well with them.
Yeah.
So there's still some variability, um, and some tailoring that needs to occur.
Yeah. And you were talking about like a patch. It reminds me of the chronometer, not chronometer, the insulin.
Yeah, it's exactly the continuous glucose monitors.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what it kind
So
of reminds me of.
people are working on something similar, for C-reactive protein, and so I think we'll have something like that eventually. But I also realize that for most of us, if we just think about certain symptoms, like how's my energy level after eating? Do I feel tired, or do I and need to go into a food coma, or do I have a lot of energy? Like, how did I sleep last night? You know, how was my bowel movement? Like, there's very high level metrics that you can kind of keep track of that are a pretty good proxy to technology. And it kind of goes back to my point of, most of the time with startups, I try to be as low tech as possible and start with the least expensive solution before I go and jump towards the most expensive solution.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, because you know your body more than, these, like what you just talked about, Viome, or the AIP diet. They say these things are okay, but then you get down to it and you're not feeling good after you eat certain foods. And so would you say there are some parallels between tech innovation and the way you have solved your health challenges?
Yeah, I think that uh, there definitely are certain mantras that I tell myself. Um, you know, as I'm doing a startup, you'll have some setbacks, um, and I'll tell myself if the work is hard, work harder. Um, you know, it's keep going. Um, there's just those sorts of mantras kind of help me power through. Uh, it's sort of just like not giving up, being persistent. Um, all of those strengths, character strengths, I can be applied from doing startups to managing your own health journey. It's a matter of resilience.
Yeah. And you also have a book, the Computer Athlete's Handbook. It offers, different tips on how to, take care of yourself while you're using the computer very often or for your career. How have you managed your computer usage or your ergonomics and your autoimmune condition while keeping a high profile career like you have?
Yeah. Well, first, I'll say that for the longest time, I didn't even want to tell people that I had Crohn
Hmm.
because I was afraid that I would get stigmatized and that it would negatively impact my uh, tech career. And so, until relatively recently, after selling my last company, I I was very reluctant to talk about it. But at this point, I'm willing and open to talk about my journey and struggles. Um, in regards to ergonomics, one of the worst things for me is sitting for long periods of time. And so I have a standing desk. I go for walks, and I make sure to get outside for at least 15 minutes a day in the sun during the peak hours so that I get vitamin D. So those things, for people with Crohn's, maintaining your vitamin D levels is super important.
Yeah, yeah. And especially, I mean, well, I think, any infection, um, any autoimmune disease, I mean, I felt a difference once I added more vitamin D to my lifestyle. I take the supplements with a K, but with your new venture, your new startup, Get Saucy, if we transition to that, can you share more of the story behind Get Saucy? I mean, obviously your Crohn's disease, but
Yeah, so after I had some success in my career, I was talking to a buddy of mine, and I said, he said, what are your dreams? What's on your vision board? And I said, there's really two things that I would really want. One is the beach house. That's one dream that I have. And the second thing is to have a personal chef because I don't like cooking, and I'm not very good at it. And he said, well, how much would it cost to have a personal chef? And I said, that's a really good question. So I thought about it and I went online. I went on all these websites, meetachef.com, Take a Chef, Kitchen Remedy, 5 to 10 different websites, and I started interviewing chefs. And I started telling them about, hey, are you familiar with the Autoimmune Protocol? Most people said no. Um, and I told them my favorite dish is, chicken tikka masala. Could you try to make it? Here's an example recipe. Most people said this is impossible. It's not going to taste right. You can't make tikka masala without tomatoes. And I tried. A couple chefs said, hey, I'll try it, and they tried it, and it didn't taste like tikka masala. And then eventually I was introduced to Suhan, who nailed it. And so
Mm.
once once we figured out that we could make it taste like tikka masala, I realized, hey, I solved my own problem, which is I wanted to experience my favorite flavors, but I realized, hey, we have a game-changing product here, and so many other people could benefit from this. I can't easily clone Suhan, but I could make, you know, we could mass produce this and give it to everybody.
Thank you. I
Exactly.
did have somebody on my, she was on my podcast. She was a personal chef. She wrote a book, and we were talking about marinara sauce, and she gave me a list of marinara sauce, and I was just like, no, I'm not doing all that. I didn't even attempt it. It is a huge burden, and if you can make mole sauce, I'll be very happy, because
Oh, I
that.
mean, we'll add that to the list.
um,
We have a little running list right now. We've been surveying people, asking them, "What's your favorite dish? What's the flavor you're missing the most?" And then, Suhan will kind of play with it and think about what notes are in it, and see if he can come up with something. Um, and then obviously, if there's enough people who are interested in it, uh, my goal is to have 15 to 25 different sauces and flavors that cover a very broad range of cuisines. So you could have a different flavor for every single meal, lunch and dinner for an entire week. And I want to get to the point where people come to us and say, "Oh my gosh, Brian, there's too many choices. Can you stop making flavors? Because I can't decide what to eat next." You know, that would be a good problem to have.
mhm, for sure, especially when you're very restricted. It feels joyful to have that many options. And just a plug, if you go to getsaucy.com, you could get on the VIP list. You can voice your opinion. If you get to his Facebook, Get Saucy group, so you can voice your opinion. FYI.
Yep. And our group is called Get Saucy with Us.
Awesome. So, how did your love for food and experience really change any challenges with what you're doing now with nutrition and those with delicious restricted diets? What was the process of taking away and adding, since this is a whole new system for your startup?
So first I have to hand it to Suhan. He's the genius. Like, my primary job is to be a cheerleader for Suhan. He's an incredible chef, uh, top 0.1% chef. He's a Marine vet. He went to culinary school. He was the head of production for Gorilla Barbecue for 2.5 years and took them from 1.5 to 11 million in sales. He
Wow.
worked at the executive dining program for JP Morgan and made meals for the CEO, Jamie Dimon, U.S. presidents, and foreign dignitaries. And he worked as a saucier at a Michelin star restaurant. And I I initially said that the hardest problem to solve was finding Suhan. Everything after that is relatively easy. So I'm super blessed to have gotten to know Suhan, and that he was not easy to convince, but eventually decided to join me on this journey, um, because he's doing, you know, God's work, you know, making these flavors. And there's people in our group, when they see our flavors, and I ask them, which flavor are you most excited about? And they're like, I haven't tasted marinara sauce in 7 years. Um, it's definitely marinara. And other people are like, I want to try all the sauces. I just want to experience something new, a different flavor. I've been eating the same thing day in, day out. So I would say those two are, people will have one or two flavors they're particularly excited about, but the vast majority of people are just excited to try everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But especially mole. um, I've heard you mention God twice, and I want to ask you, how has your faith helped you throughout this whole process of your autoimmune condition, through your startups, through your life?
Yeah. So uh, the name of the company is Heal the World Through Food, and Heal the World um, is Tikkun Olam, which is a very like key principle of my religion, of Judaism, and we're brought here to the world is not perfect, and we're here to fix the world. And so for me, um, like I whenever I do a startup and if I'm trying to solve a problem, with Instamed, we were trying to our initial goal was to revolutionize the healthcare payment system. Um, Eventually, it kind of transitioned to being a healthcare payment transaction processor. For this company, my goal is to heal the world through food. So what that looks like is helping people heal their bodies or let their bodies heal itself by giving it the nutrients they need to heal, but also avoiding the nutrients that are anti-nutrients for them. And also by bringing people together. When when you're on the AIP diet and your food doesn't taste good, people don't want to eat with you. Um, but when I was able to have a chef, or now that I have the sauces, I can eat again with my family. And so it's like bringing my family closer together. I now have more time to spend with my family, and I'm happier and healthier. So it's all of those things, and then that can translate to sharing meals with people outside your family.
Yeah,
Um,
community.
Community, exactly.
Yeah. If you think about your mission in healing the world with food and those two, like, what do you think the food industry is missing? If you're on a mission to heal the world, what do you think the food industry is missing from their standpoint, from taking care of feeding people?
The food industry, they're optimizing around keeping costs down, making sure that there's consistency in terms of flavor. They're making it available to as many people as possible. It's about efficiency. However, when we think about the food, we're thinking not just about minimizing cost and efficiency and flavor. We're also taking health into consideration as, let's say, the top priority. And so for us, using organic ingredients, which are more expensive, high quality ingredients, not not relying on food chemicals to extend the lifespan or the shelf life of the product. So we're foregoing a lot of the advances in food science in order to maximize health. Because if those companies had to pay for the negative externalities and additional healthcare costs, the food wouldn't be as cheap as it is right now. They're not having to pay for what are, maybe the government has to pay or your health insurance company has to pay for expensive medical treatments. And overall, we believe that by using our products for people who need them, can reduce costs by more than 80% overall, and create more productivity, which will drive, an increase in GDP. It'll be better for the entire country. I recently learned that the Social Security Administration there's 200,000 people in the U.S. on disability for autoimmune disease, and in 2023, the government created the Office of Autoimmune Disease Research and have funded it with around $1 billion to research autoimmune disease and try to see if there can be, a cure or other solutions. And what this company is about is going and creating a solution that doesn't require any crazy new technology that's available today and is low risk. Um, and so we're super excited about that mission and that goal, and it's something that is doable right away. And the sooner that we can get to scale, the more people we can help, and the more support we get, the more flavors we can make.
Yeah. Yeah. Open up different opportunities. It sounds like you're starting this new innovative way of thinking, healing and using whatever we got, the technology, the food science, to help others. And if we looked at the food industry different, they could make more money, but they're just going about it a different way. To me, because you're going to be making money, and I know
I think that there's a belief, there's a set of beliefs that the existing industry has. For example, they think that all we care about is how cool the packaging looks and the price and the flavor, that we don't really care about health that much. But I think that that's starting to change. For example, if you look at soda pops, there's, Poppy now.
Yeah.
And, you know, there used to be Slim Jims, and now there's Chomps and other beef sticks.
Mm-hmm.
And so in each of these different categories, in chips, in sodas, cookies, etc., a new layer is coming in that's more of a functional food or a much more healthier version, and the consumers are voting with their wallet. However, in the sauce category, you have your ragu and prego, which was sort of the first round of sauces, and then the next iteration is like Rayo's,
Or
your
Newman's, I think
and
also.
Newman's.
Yeah.
Yes, there's several of those that are organic, they're healthier, they're more expensive. And then what we're trying to be is the next evolution in sauces, which are more functional, appeal to people who are on specific restricted diets, and they're organic. Um, some of those others that I mentioned may or may not be organic, and they don't use any preservatives or anything else. Like a lot of brands, even Heinz ketchup, they have a simple version. So you're starting to see the consumers are starting to demand fewer ingredients, a simple version. The difference with us is everything we're doing is the healthy version. We're not doing a unhealthy version or a one with, you know, food additives version and then a healthy version. Everything we're doing has to meet. I would not sell anything that I wouldn't personally consume myself.
Yeah. And that says a lot, because you're committed, like you said. And as far as the innovation that you've been leading into your work, any lessons that you've learned going through all this as far as the company?
Yeah, so typically when I do a startup, I look for some white space where there's a large unmet need. And in this particular area, I looked for sauces that were compliant with this diet, and I couldn't find any. And I wanted to solve a problem that I had. And then when you look at a company, I like to look for problems where the alternative is a manual process. So in this case, the manual process is cooking from scratch. So to, let's say, semi-automate that process, we can start with a ready-made sauce. So some of those principles and most of the startups that I've done, started with some either manual processes, uh, no other competitors, a large unmet need, something that is really, really painful for people. Not a nice to have, but a must have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do you manage your stress? I mean, because stress and autoimmune disease don't go together. So how do you manage the stress of?
Yeah, I think that I don't know if I have a simple answer for it, but I will say that I try to make sure I go for walks, that I spend time sitting out in the sun, that I try to turn off my computer most nights at around 7 o'clock. So it's a number of habits that I try to commit to. I wouldn't say that I'm always perfect with that. There are times where I have to stay up late for a deadline or something that's coming up. Um, but in general, I I try to limit that. I wouldn't say that stress for me. Um, I haven't had a. I would say earlier in my career, I would get really stressed out at work when I had a problem I couldn't figure out, and I would obsess about it and obsess, and then I found that I wouldn't sleep, and then my performance would be worse. And what I found out was sometimes you just have to let go and not try to force it, and get a good night's rest, take a few days, and revisit it, and then your brain will kind of work on it in the background, and
Mm-hmm.
it'll figure it out. I wait for my body to feel inspiration, and when I feel that inspiration, I feel like I'm in the zone, as people would say, or in the flow, and then it just flows out naturally. But when I'm not in the flow, or if I'm having, let's say, writer's block, I just let it go and go for a walk and say I'm going to come back to it.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of a book I've read called The Butterfly, not the butterfly effect, but it is talking about how Benjamin Franklin used to sleep with a metal ball in his hand. And when he would start to fall asleep and just let go of what you were saying, let go of all those thoughts, and the ball would drop, and that will wake him up. And just before he started falling into that deep sleep, he would be able to think outside the box, kind of let things go instead of, kind of pushing forward all the time. It would give him an opening of how do I solve that problem? But of course, you got to sleep or go to take a nap and go to sleep thinking of that problem and try to, I guess, harness it with your healthcare IT, your tech IT, and now food. How do you see the food technology and nutrition changing in the future?
Yeah, I hope that the combination. Once people know more about what's going on in their bodies, I believe that they'll be more motivated to take action. And doing a blood test, it's still a little bit of a chore. It's invasive. You know, doing a stool test is not. It has an ick factor. So if companies can create passive, continuous monitoring for your health, like some of the ideas I described with the toilet or the continuous glucose monitor or the C-reactive protein monitor, et cetera, I I think that that can make a big difference. So one of the areas that I'm most excited about is that once people become aware of, right now people are looking at the AIP diet and saying, hey, I can do medication or I can do this diet that's really, really difficult, assuming that they've even heard of the diet, because I've met a large number of people in Facebook groups that have not even heard of the AIP diet. But it's pretty daunting to do the diet.
Yeah, it is.
And once we dramatically reduce the difficulty level and the time commitment, and more people start adopting it, I think we can catalyze a dramatic change in people's mindsets. I read a story, or I saw a TED talk from this guy. I think his last name is uh, Gregor. He has nutritionfacts.org. He talks about a woman who had heart disease, and the doctor said you have 6 months to live, and there's nothing more we can do for you. So you just tell your relatives, your friends that your life is over.
Wow.
And she got really sad about it, and she says, "Hey, if the doctors can't help me, I'm gonna have to help myself." And she's changed her diet. She started going on walks. She lost a lot of weight, and she lived for another 30 years.
Wow.
And that was his grandmother. That was one of several TED Talks that has inspired me that I still think about on a regular basis. And then he dedicated his life to showing people the power of nutrition to extend your life, to eliminate chronic disease, because he got 30 more years with his favorite person, his grandma. And so, how can I contribute to that experience? There's a lot of other people who are much better at creating recipes and cookbooks than I am, but I felt that this creating Get Saucy and bringing these products to market is the most effective way that I can make a difference.
Yeah. No, it's very helpful. And that everybody's interested in spending their weekends in the kitchen, like you said. I mean, it takes a lot of time to make these sauces and make them to a point where you like them. And I want to thank you for your time. Is there anything else that you would like to add or anything that I have not asked that you would like to share with the audience?
So, I did want to share just a couple quick thoughts I have about being an entrepreneur. And one of them is that the product equals the team. I learned that from a mentor of mine. And so when you think about the quality of the product equals the team, if you're missing any strength in the team, you're going to miss that in the product. So my job is to make sure that all the different aspects of the product are represented by people on the team with those strengths. So combining people's strengths, not combining people's weaknesses, but combining people's strengths and having people work on what they're good at is the key to having a successful venture. And being able to identify people who have strengths, being able to convince them to join you, and obviously keeping them happy. And then finally, my philosophy is if the team is happy, then the product is going to be great. And if the product is great, then the customers will be happy. And if the customers are happy, then the shareholders will be happy. That it is possible for everybody to be happy. I think sometimes people think that the only way that the shareholders can be happy is if everyone else is miserable, you know, and that's not my philosophy. I think we can have a successful business, but also have ecstatic customers and super happy staff as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Because everybody pictures shareholders, beating down on the company and the team. And obviously, you know what you're talking about. You've had many successful startups and you're a successful, not only entrepreneur and tech leader, but you obviously already have that. You've always had that mindset and probably since you were 9.
Well, what for me is that I have a lot of empathy, and it's really hard for me to do something that is going to make someone else feel bad. So, because I'm going to feel their pain. So, I don't like having anxiety. I don't like being afraid that I'm not going to have a job tomorrow. So, I cannot put other people into that position. And I try to be extremely fair. I physically cannot, you know, be a jerk because it just physically hurts me to hurt other people. Um, some people might consider it a weakness, but for me, it's a strength because people that I've brought into the team, at various companies, they stick with me for a long time because they know that I'm going to create a positive working environment and that I'm always going to be fair and honest.
Sounds like you're a good boss. Thank you so much, Brian, for your time. And Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Autoimmune Warriors and others. I really appreciate your support and listening. I want you to be aware of 4 companies. One is Isla Health. They make it easy and helpful to track your lifestyle to reduce flares. But it's more than a tracking app. Isla Health uses data to develop a personalized care plan that works for your life. So why not check it out? Number 2, Adapt Naturals by Chris Kresser. I'm excited to let you know about BioAvail Multi. It gives you the full spectrum of ingredients that you need to thrive, like essential vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients. So go to adaptnaturals/DES15. Use my code DES15, DEZ, to get 15% off your first order. And number 3, it is a autoimmune community, Brightly Thrive. Yes, it is an inclusive, fun space to learn, grow, heal, and shine brightly with others that are facing autoimmune challenges just like you. And last but not least is LeapCure. Check out how you can benefit from their company and what their latest clinical trial is. So, thank you so much and be stronger than autoimmune. Until next time.